Is it 10? Is it 10? It's 10 people. We can start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my panel of how to make cosplay on a budget. Some of you may already know how to do some of these tricks. Like, this is pretty simple for those who just want to start out and just start making stuff, start with sewing, and they're not complex in any way. Like, the really wonderful thing about all the characters in My Little Pony is that you have so many options to create like whatever kind of design you want for it. And I think if you see cosplayers around here, I'm gonna just take a reference from the Las Vegas ponies. They just created that as an inspiration between ponies and showgirls. You can create anything as long as you have a picture in your mind. But for these, it's just little tips and tricks to help you kind of get started so that you can kind of make your way into making more works and just kind of improving yourself as you decide to delve into cosplay. I hope that sounded good. All right, awesome. All right, so the misconceptions I started with in middle school when I started cosplaying was I figured it was always expensive because I didn't really think that you could make your own, even though I did it anyways, and they were ugly. They were very ugly. Like, I had fabric markers on white t-shirts and bad drawing skills back then. Very bad drawing skills back then. So I always thought it was expensive, and I ended up buying like several costumes that were like $60 to $80, and my goal of this is to have you around 50 and under range, because each article of clothing, like each process you put into it, does end up adding up quite a bit, and I'll kind of show you near the end like how everything kind of prices out individually and how it adds up as a whole costume ending up being that way. But when you're starting out with like just buying some clothes, it doesn't seem like very much, so you don't get as discouraged when you're making them, I believe. And it's not that hard to create. I'm going over upcycling in this panel because I find that if you're not really familiar with sewing techniques, it's really easy to just take a garment like this t-shirt and just kind of cut it up, hem it, and change it to be your own thing. And sleeves are really annoying to make, so it kind of helps out with just time and preventing you from having to like freak out about something super new. Like, if you're gonna try making a costume all on your own, like a whole ensemble of like a shirt all on your own where you have to cut out each piece and sew it together, it ends up being very stressful in my opinion, mostly because of sleeves. Everything else is fine, just sleeves. I hate them. They're the worst. And pants. Who needs those? Exactly. Exactly. So, the nice thing about just having a garment that already has like the structure to it, you can just change it in any form you want pretty much. So you don't have to start from scratch. So as I said before, my goal is to make these around the 40 to 50 range. It can be under. It just really depends on what you end up buying and just being smart about your shopping decisions. And I'm going to show you some videos of easy sewing techniques with hand stitching and on a sewing machine, because you know, some people don't have access to sewing machines, but the cheapest sewing machines are around $100 to $80, and they'll do your basic straight stitch. So it's not hard to get into really if you really want to start sewing. And it's not that hard. So your two best friends for making cosplay on a budget is Goodwill and eBay. Thank you. So Goodwill, which almost all of my clothing is from, other than like some shoes, is pretty much where you would happen to get, or other thrift shops really, where you would get the clothing that you could use to just cut up and change and rearrange pretty much. And I say eBay because sometimes you can't find the shoes you want, or, you know, the easiest place I can find wigs. Most of the time I go for at most $10 for wigs. You can find really nice high quality wigs around $10 just as long as you're looking for it. If you're desperate though and you just kind of need something to come fast, it might end up being more than that. Yes, what's up? Thank you. See, I'm not an all-knowing person, so I'm totally okay with people telling me their opinions because it's helpful to everyone. Where was I? But I normally get stuff off of eBay. My most expensive wig is probably my Miku Hatsune wig because that's always in demand pretty much. So sometimes if it's a really popular wig, it'll just end up being expensive no matter what. And that's kind of what you have to do with understanding like all these prices when you have like money focused on, hello Kim Possible. What's the sitch? All right, so I am just gonna show you an easy straight stitch where you would take two pieces of fabric and just, oh, there's my mouse, put it together. So I personally prefer the sewing machine. I think it's quick, it doesn't take forever, hence quick. And I'm using black thread so you can kind of see easier what I'm doing. I'm just using scrap pieces to make an example. So, yep, there we go. So when you're sewing stuff, you want to always make sure you're sewing things inside out. Because you don't really want to see all that like extra fabric or anything on the outside, because that's what I did when I started. So the stitch that I use on my sewing machine is the one that says number 1. And that's a straight stitch. It's more over to the left than in the middle. And if you are happening to do like sewing on patches or something, you'd use a stitch like number 4, which it zigzags between the fabric and the patch to kind of cling it all together. I, of course, did not do a demo on patches because I didn't have any, but I figured that would help. Do zigzag patterns if you're sewing on patches. Yeah. All right, and this one is hand stitching. Suddenly my hands are a lot older. Wow. Look, and I have suddenly better cuticle care. Wow. That's amazing. But pretty much when you're doing a hem stitch with hand stitching, it's a lot more invisible compared to a straight stitch that you would use on a sewing machine. So if you want something to really flow down like a dress without looking like it has a seam or anything, you'd really want to do a hand stitch in my opinion, because you kind of take very small pieces of the fabric and kind of zigzag between an upper part and the lower part to create what would appear, if you were using the same colored string as the fabric, we're using black thread so you can actually see it, so it would appear to not have any thread in it really. And that's kind of the magical thing about sewing, is you can kind of hide stuff as long as you know what to do, which is why I made this panel to help people out. So yeah, it's for you guys. And wow, this is taking a long time. Yeah, it's old hands, man. I don't know, probably arthritis. Oh, look at that zoom in. That is pro camera work right there. But pretty much in that stitching, I know it's taking forever and I don't have a fast forward button. Let's go here. Or there we go. Okay, so you kind of see there's like a zigzag pattern happening there. It's very small stitching, but it helps. All right, so now I'm going to continue on to what I created for this convention because, you know, everyone has kind of an image in their mind of what a character kind of would be dressed as. So I'm not going to really say that you have to make costumes a certain way because if you have a design in your mind, you should totally go for it. So the two costumes I made for this convention was a Daring Do costume and my vinyl scratch costume, which I am now presented in front of you with. Oh, thank you, thank you. I have glasses, they're really cheap. They were $5, but they don't look as purple. But budgeting, right there. So with my first costume with Daring Do, I started out with like all Goodwill clothes. So I have this kind of jacket, this tank top, and these capris. Oh, and these shoes. They were originally $90, and I got them for $6. Yeah. That's budgeting, baby. All right, so I took these I took these capris, and I ended up chopping off the legs. Brutal murder. As you can see, the tools I'm using, there's kind of like this pizza cutter thing. It's really helpful if you want to just have a straight line instead of just using fabric scissors, because I have shaky hands, and I always end up with like really annoying like leftover fabric particles that just hang there, and you have to trim for hours to get rid of them. It's really annoying. So I use this tool to just chop off stuff really quick as long as I don't have to do super intricate cutting. And then I chopped off the other leg. They are shorts now. However, in order to get rid of that kind of frazzled area, I ended up pinning the inside of the shorts and doing a straight stitch on the bottom so that they kind of rounded off like you would see with normal fabric, except my stitching is really sloppy and I'm still getting better at that, so I apologize. But whenever you finish stitching something, you definitely want to get rid of all those extra strings because you don't want to be walking around with just strings hanging out. Notably, you'll have a very strong urge to tug at it, and that will kill your seam. Like, it'll just fall apart. So I definitely recommend if you are doing a seam on something, you might want to do like small increments where you would go through a seam in a line and you would just kind of stop, take a stitch back, and then you would go again. Because sometimes like one little thread comes out of that whole seam you just did and it just unravels, and it's the worst feeling in the world. So now I've taken care of one part of legs. As you can see, comparatively it looks a lot nicer compared to the one that I didn't hem. And there's a little bit of a close-up. All right. And here's kind of a video of me doing the other side of the leg just to kind of show my safety procedures with that. Because normally you would fold your fabric at least twice. I prefer 3 times, but there was a weird pocket on the capris, so I had to cut it pretty short. Shorts. My puns are amazing, guys. I'm so pro. So pretty much you just take slow stitches each time. Like I said, a sewing machine is a lot faster than hand stitching, but there's something really beautiful about hand stitching once you get good at it. It's seamless, it's gorgeous, it takes forever. So there's the end results of those shorts. Apparently they're from Maurice's. I don't know, I got them at Goodwill. Probably way cheaper. And so I'm gonna continue on to this shirt. So, you know, Daring Do kind of has like this greenish color shirt. And I was like, well, this shirt's brown, but it's the style I want. So I decided that I would dye it. Now at Walmart, you can get pretty much like pretty easy dyes in the craft section. They're about $1 to $3 depending on if there's on clearance or not, or on sale, as they say. So there's another garment that I ended up dyeing later, which are these lovely shorts. But for this one, I ended up using a lime green to dye that jacket. So I ended up, oh yeah, this is all homemade stuff. It's beautiful. You can do this at home. probably help with your parent, because that's what I did. Man, pots are heavy, man. But yeah, so I ended up boiling the biggest pots I had with water. And I ended up using this, I don't know, everyone's been calling it a vat, so I guess it's a vat. I just called it a bucket. People use fancy words sometimes. It's a vat. So I used this bigger bucket just so I could use it for stirring, because when you're dyeing clothes, you have to, at least with the dye that I used, I know each one is different, always follow the directions, don't ignore them like I first did when I first started dyeing. So what you're gonna do is, for the dye that I used, you have to stir continuously for 10 straight minutes. And if you decide that you're gonna sit on your knees and do that, that ends up hurting your back. Sit in a chair, people, please. Do not hurt your backs. You need those when you're older. Or not, you might wanna just be in a wheelchair. I'm not gonna judge you. So yeah, and afterwards of stirring that, you have to just kind of stir it on and off for the next 45 minutes. So it takes about an hour to fully dye a piece of garment, which can get pretty annoying if you get distracted easily like me. But I ended up just setting a timer for every 5 minutes, and that seemed to work. Now, as you can see, this has a very lovely green. Oh, it's a lot prettier on that screen. This has a very pretty, like, kind of velvety green color to it. But what you need to know with dyeing is that every time you dye something, like, the color you get once it comes out is always going to be darker than when it dries. So if you want it to be darker, you may need to, like, re-dye it or add a different color to your dye set. Just kind of be aware that this will not be the end result color. It may look super pretty and you'll be like, oh, I'm so proud of this color, and then it dries and you're like, But that didn't happen to me. I was happy with these results for once. So, fun facts about wigs: you cannot bleach them. I decided I was going to try it even though everyone told me it was impossible. You can't bleach wigs. That's what I learned. But you can darken wigs. Now, there are several ways that you can darken wigs. You can use henna ink, and that works very well. You can also take alcohol-based markers and just kind of go across whatever part you want to darken, whatever color you want. Like, you know, be pretty picky with colors if you have a certain color in mind. They might be a little pricey markers, but they will look so beautiful on that wig. So I ended up, Blick Studio's pretty cheap. Like, if you get a set, it was like $30 for like a bunch of markers, so it was pretty nice. So I ended up, this is my Daring Do wig, and I ended up getting a, I apologize for my mispronunciation because I never watched the show. I ended up getting a Dangaropa, or whatever it's called, wig. That. I got that wig, and it was like half black, half white, and I'm like, I could make this work. I can totally make wigs like darker with like black dye, like totally ignoring everyone's advice that it's acrylic. Like, why would hair dye work on a wig that's not real hair? I don't listen to people very well. I make bad decisions a lot.
Don't worry, we all do.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. So I ended up taking a black marker, which black markers never actually look black to me. They actually look like kind of like a dark reddish color. I don't know if that's just me. I'm weird. And like a light gray. And I ended up, everybody's weird. Thank you. That makes the world go round or something like that. I don't know, some other cliche line added here. So I ended up just sitting for about like 3 hours just coloring my wig while watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I just, it takes time to make them darker, and while you're kind of markering it, coloring it, whatever you want to call it, it kind of ends up bunching a little. Like this kind of happens with the alcoholic markers. The henna ink is a little nicer, but you can normally only get that in brown and black, so you have very limited options with henna ink. But you can pretty much just go through it, and it takes a couple hours, but after it's dried and you haven't really don't touch it a bunch because it will come off in your hands if it's still drying. Once that's done, you can just brush it and it feels as soft as it was before you added it. So that was my experiment where everyone's like, you can't make it darker. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna make it darker no matter what, so I'm gonna make this work. So it ended up working out quite nicely, and I was very happy with the results. Nobody was like, oh, why are you wearing that dang, can you say the name again? Thank you. As long as I wasn't being asked that I was wearing that wig, it was a success in my book. So that was just another picture farther down. Like the upper part you can kind of see I was using black, and the lower I was using gray. It transformed. And for this Daring Do costume, I ended up making a little safari hat, so I'm just kind of going to go over the steps I did to make that. So I started out with all these materials. They're about like $1 each, pretty much, except for that magic mold. That stuff was like $2. How dare they? So I started out with this like styrofoam ball and a knife that I probably didn't wash afterwards. So someone probably got styrofoam in their steak. So I ended up cutting it a little bit farther than just half because, I don't know, if you look at a hat, I don't think it's just like 1/2 circle. I kind of think it's a little bigger, so this is just a personal thing. So you'd have these two, 1/2's bigger. I don't know what else to call it other than halves, man. So I took this and I ended up making kind of a circle around this butterfly because it was thick and I thought it would help out with making a bit of a thicker rim. As you can see, I've penned out everything and I just cut it, and whatever stray lines I had left, I just got rid of them to kind of neaten it up. And I cut out 2 more pieces of foam, glued them together on that, and then kind of glued the styrofoam half, or whatever you want to call it, on top of that part, making a nice little UFO. Then I took this beautiful magical modeling clay from Crayola. That's probably not toxic, as they say, but I don't believe them. And I just kind of ended up putting it, ooh, bells, all the way around this little thing until it became a very white little UFO. And then I just ended up smoothing out like any awkward fingerprints that I had on there with my fingers. And eventually I ended up kind of rolling out, we've all played with Play-Doh when we were little, right? Just kind of like rolled out like on the table, little skinny pieces. I ended up circling them and using kind of a pen to flatten them, the insides in, so it looked a little more cohesive together and wasn't just an awkward circle on that piece. And I don't know about you, but pit helms end up kind of having like those little straps in the front, so I just kind of did that as a personal stylistic part. That's a blurry image. Oh, that's sexy. But just wrapping it around the bottom because no one sees the bottom of my hat, so I mean I get a little kind of messy when people can't see parts because I'm like, no one's gonna see it, it's fine. And eventually I just kind of added parts that I would conclude as the cloth part of the pit helm. Well, I have a fun fact. If you live in a super awesome area like Wisconsin where your humidity changes at an amazing rate, sometimes when you leave things outside, they crack. So I ended up using a gloss medium, which I use with acrylic paints because I go to art school, so I have all those supplies. And I just kind of ended up using this gel gloss to kind of bind the pieces back together because, as you can see, it is really gross looking before I added that. And then eventually I ended up using just more acrylic paints to paint this over. You can, craft paint is okay, but it ends up having kind of a chalky matte texture to it, in my personal opinion. Like, there's something just really nice about acrylic paints where it has this kind of shine to it. Like, it looks cohesive and nice, and you don't really see brush strokes as often. So they're pretty cheap acrylics that aren't gonna like really hit you down the bank too much. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a brand called Basics. You can find it at like any craft store, like a Michael's or something. Are there other craft stores other than Michael's? Oh, you're right. I always go there for sewing, so. But I end up using Daniel Smith because, one, I was already equipped with it, and two, I just like how it feels when I'm painting stuff. So for making that color on that hat, I ended up using titanium white and a burnt umber and a yellow ochre. If you ever get into paints, like, it's really fun to just experiment with techniques and stuff and how to make colors. Like, just go for it. I think we all kind of have a good visual idea of what colors are in our heads, at least. And then I ended up using like a sap green to make the colored part on this. I had not dyed my jacket yet at this point, so it is a completely different color than that jacket. Probably should have waited, but that's fine. So yeah, I ended up using titanium white and sap green. And then I ended up using that burnt umber again for that strap part. And I just ended up gluing like, they're like hair clips you can get at Walmart. Just super glued them on the bottom. It was awesome. But the costume total for this ended up being $44, with the shirt being $6, the pants being $9, the boots, oh, they were $7? Dang. I was $1 off, people. I apologize. The hat was $5 because of that dang Crayola. And the wig was $8 and the jacket was $9. So when you really add it up, it ends up being kind of quite a bit, like, as you see the huge number. But when you're making this, you're slowly kind of acquiring these garments to remake. And it just doesn't seem that much, and it doesn't feel like you're breaking the bank in the end. And you ended up creating this awesome work. Like, kudos to everyone who does that. So for this awesome vinyl outfit I am wearing, I had this like super double extra large shirt, a tank top, some skinny jeans, and these shoes. All right, so I took the skinny jeans and I ended up kind of doing the same thing I did with the capris, except I actually did my 3 rolls, like I said, is way more preferable. So the fun thing about kind of stuff when you have the seam on the outside, you can just sew along that seam. You don't have to go all the way around. You can sew along that seam. It'll kind of keep it all together on that. And, you know, sometimes like when you wash stuff, like, I don't know if you've had store-bought stuff where it's already like pre-rolled, but it doesn't have that front part sewed on, so you have it where it has it unwrinkles in the wash or something, and it's just like, gosh darn it, I have to iron this, and who irons anymore? That is an old thing. I iron. Just don't listen to me. So it's a super helpful technique where you don't have to use a lot of thread, even though thread's not that expensive. It's like $4 like for a roll, but it lasts you for like ever, so it's not a big deal. Unless you sew a lot, and then maybe not as much as forever, probably like a year. So with the rest of the pant legs that I had from the skinny jeans that I cut off, because I also decapitated them, I ended up making these awesome fingerless gloves. Wow, you guys are so nice to me. This is my first panel ever, and you guys have just been like raising my spirits. All right, so I took the ends of those jeans, just kind of measured them out. I am not good at measuring, I promise. And I ended up hemming the bottom so it didn't look like it was just dangling on. Always hem. You will see the strands slowly coming apart if you don't hem it. That's what I did with the thumb area. I was lazy, people. These strings will just come apart, and it will be the worst experience. Carry many scissors around. So I ended up hemming the bottom, and then kind of pinning my hand in there. That was smart. In order to kind of get a more correct shape, because it was a little big on me. Like it was like wearing a tent on your hand. It was wonderful. There were horses and everything, guys. So I ended up sewing that area. So you can kind of see there's like this loop that kind of gets created when you kind of sew an area kind of skinnier. And just cut off that excess because it will bunch inside when you're wearing it and it'll be weird. And no one likes bunching, especially when you're wearing costume because it just gets hot and sweaty. Or maybe you like that. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. So that ended up being the end result. And as you can see around the thumb area, there are loose strings. And I'll probably sew that together eventually. Who knows? And then, in this giant extra large shirt that ended up being this, I just tore it up. I cut off everything. I cut off the neckline, I cut off the arms, I cut off the belly area. It's all cut up. And then I ended up just pinning it up, and hemming is, I'm just going to keep saying, hemming is important. It just looks so much nicer if you hem it. Or you can do the invisible stitch where it doesn't even look like there's a line. Just as long as you don't have that awkward, like, strings hanging out like my thumbs do. It's awesome. So as you can see, as an end result of just hemming that, like, from all the, like, kind of jagged lines that, I'm really bad at cutting, guys. All the jagged lines that happen from cutting, it looks a lot nicer. I ended up doing the top part too. I was going to be lazy and be like, oh, you don't need to do the top part. That part just hangs down. That's fine. I ended up going back and being like, it's starting to like stretch like really badly. So hemming it just kind of keeps everything together. It keeps it all nice. Less problems when you're actually at the con. And nobody wants problems at conventions, am I right? No, exactly. I love your guys' reactions. You are so lovely. Thank you. You're welcome. So I ended up using more acrylic paint because that is my buddy when it comes to the fact that I don't own anything that involves screen printing, and I don't know if any of you do. But it's expensive to start, but once you have screen, oh yes. Yeah, fabric paint works really well. I'm picky. Yeah, what's up? Embroidering is fun. I mean, I have yet to embroider. Well, I tried on one of those little nice old lady basket things. That's if you have an embroidery machine, though. Those cost around $300 to $400, people. So I end up just using acrylic paint because that's what I have at hand. Like, you can pretty much use anything you have. Yeah, I mean, don't use dirt. That's probably a better suggestion. Don't use dirt. That's going to be my slogan for today. All right, so I ended up just using a Mars black and an ultramarine blue to just paint out this lovely little area. I was not paying attention to how far this was near my armpit, however. Because it's super under my armpit, guys. So if I had like chosen to redo this or something, I'd probably put it more towards the middle. But, you know, these are the things that happen when you're making cosplay. Like, sometimes you just kind of mess up, but, like, I don't know, I was still kind of proud of it in the end, so. It's whatever you want to do. Like, if you are not satisfied with something, remake it. I mean, that's what I was taught in art school. Most people are supposed to be smart, so. So yeah, like I said, I just ended up using an ultramarine blue and a Mars black. Most of the time you do not want to mix two different kinds of acrylic paints. I'm lucky because Liquitex works well with Daniel Smith, but most of the time the pigments just aren't friends with each other because each company makes their paints differently. So probably wasn't the best idea for me to choose 2 different kinds of acrylics to put together, but you don't learn anything without trying. And this is my baby for making stuff actually stay on the fabric. It kind of, this is just a medium that kind of makes the paint more liquidy, like it kind of turns it into what we would consider acrylic ink. It's very helpful, and it just goes on. Like, I wouldn't use water with acrylic if you were wanting to water it down, because the pigments just separate and stuff. Was that a Harry Potter thing? I think I just used a Harry Potter word. My bad. But it's super helpful for just kind of making painting work and stuff. Oh dear. I think my computer just died. Oh dear. Oh, this is awesome. We can just start with questions if you want. Next time on Game Grumps. What's up?
Do another thing next year.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Do another panel next year.
Oh, that is so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. You second. Okay. I was feeling super nervous about this, guys. Okay, well, I have the rest of the outfit on. Let's just go like this. All right, the rest of the outfit works. All right, so I did nothing to this tank top. I just did it so my midriff would not be showing. Because, you know, there's only so many days that I can show my midriff to people. It gets awkward. But I mean, you know, sometimes you get a tan when you walk outside, so you're like, yeah, I'm not so bad. I'm not that white. I'm pretty white. But for the shorts, as you saw that I hemmed them earlier, I ended up dyeing them as well. However, the original pieces, the original pants had like this really sparkly kind of material like woven in and stuff. And the only problem with dyeing is that you're using super hot water. Apparently, that kills anything that is super synthetic in fabric. What's up? Awesome. That will help. So because it had the synthetic fibers in it, the hot water ended up destroying most of that sparkle that I had in the pants that I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. They're going to be purple and they're going to be sparkly. I want to be the coolest kid in town, guys. No, they're just kind of, they got strings on them. Oh, they were like a lot more purple when I dyed them. And that's kind of when the unfortunate things of dyeing happens, where you're like, oh man, this color is awesome when you finish dyeing it, and then it dries and you're like, that's okay, I guess. It's to be expected. Yes, ma'am. Yeah? Yeah, that I would assume that probably. If I was, you know, probably not as much of the person that I was where I'm like, people telling me things, psh, just try it anyways. Let's see what mistakes I can make today. All right. So I'm gonna just open it up to questions. I have no idea. Is that on?
Okay, I'm just going to go anyway.
Awesome.
So I live in an apartment, and so I don't have a backyard, and I was wondering, is it possible to dye things inside, or is that just going to destroy everything?
Do you have wood floors?
Yes.
As long as you're not super, like, vigorous with the stirring and you kind of keep it, like, the first time I ever dyed, I just put it in my biggest pan, and I just stirred it around. That was messy on the grass. It kills grass, by the way. Fun fact. But I think as long as you like put down a towel that you're not afraid of like getting ruined or anything.
Plastic drop cloth for painting.
That one of those like, thank you very much. Like that can help. Like as long as you have. Oh, I'm sorry, miss. Yep. You just want to be careful because that pot is hot and that might melt that. That's why I kind of said towel at least, because you know, it'll absorb it. You probably won't get it on the floor if you're a messy person like me, at least. If you're a messy person like me, you might want to at least put down a towel. But you know, or you could find, I don't have a lot of friends, but if you find friends who have backyards, that is also a thing, as long as they're not.
The entire community of bronies.
Yeah, look at all of us. We're your friends. Boom. Right there. Yep. Is that, did that? Okay.
Out of all the cosplays you've made, which is your favorite?
What cosplay is my favorite? Yeah. Out of the ones I've made or out of people's?
Out of the ones you've made.
Wow. So, my favorite character is Sunset Shimmer. So, my favorite cosplay is that one because she's bae for me. So, she is my ultimate waifu. I would marry her. What's up?
How dare you? No, I'm kidding.
How dare I? She's sexy.
I have to admit that is very true.
See, I am not wrong in this one instance for once. What's up?
If you had to make any cosplay for any show that's not My Little Pony related, what cosplay would you make first?
I would make Ruby from Ruby. Woo! That's an easy title. What up?
So I've actually done similar things like this. This whole costume was less than $50.
And it's adorable.
Mostly because I had a lot of it in my closet. How often do you reuse other clothes you have for other costumes?
Well, I have a lot of clothes that ex-boyfriends gave me. So I used a lot of those for costumes. Like, I have a Rainbow Dash hoodie. I cut off the sleeves and I painted wings on the back and put on a Rainbow Dash patch, and I was like, yeah, that's what you get for being a bad person. Reuse clothes. Upcycling for the win. Also, your cosplay is beautiful. I hope you have a wonderful day.
So I'm slowly piecing together a cosplay of my OC.
That's wonderful.
And so I'm just wondering, the hardest part is getting like the mane.
Yeah.
So would you recommend getting a wig or dyeing your hair to the color?
Well, I mean, I will admit, I think it's harder for men to get good wigs than it is for women, and I apologize for that. I am so sorry. You guys need more opportunities for that, and there should be more opportunities. But I think your hair kind of matches well with your OC, if what I'm gathering from that plushie. Yeah. So I think actually dyeing your hair would be well, but just be careful because bleaching, like it does kind of hurt your hair a little. Like, just be aware if you dye it, it will hurt it. But I don't see a lot of curly wigs very often. They end up being really long normally, and like the ones that you see on clowns, those are scary. I don't know about you, but they scare me. But, you know, I think you could go for dyeing your hair and stuff. I think it would look good.
Okay,
As long as you stay determined on making that costume, I think it'll work. Yeah, like I'm blonde. You can't tell under this wig. I'm whatever color you want me to be. But I dye my hair darker because I have blonde hair, except the fun thing about blonde hair, dye washes out of it really easily, and it's just bad. So for darker hair, you guys get your hair dyed easier than I do, so that's a cool thing. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, like, say you're at a convention like this one, and you need a hot fix for like something that goes wrong with your cosplay. Mm-hmm. What do you think would be the best ways to handle that?
When you say hot fix, do you mean actually hot, or?
No, like just on the fly, or just quickly go back to the hotel room and fix it.
Well, I normally carry a mini sewing kit with me. They're like $1. Like, you can find them almost anywhere. Like Walmart, they probably have them everywhere. Just be like, yo, where's the craft section? There it is. Now, when it comes to something like if you have gems or something, that one's a little more complicated where you'd probably need some sort of glue. What's up?
I'm not sure if it's here again, but I remember last year you talked about
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even know we had a cosplay lounge. Look at that. I'm not very good at paying attention, people.
I've been there.
But yeah, if, like, definitely a mini sewing kit, like, at least in your suitcase, so you can go back to your hotel or something and just sit and hem it or something. It's helpful.
Thank you.
Yep. Did that answer your question enough? Okay. Hello there. Wow, you are fancy.
Yeah, I had a question concerning like weapons or other large implements. Do you have any advice on that? How to go about that?
Well, I use wood for weapons, which ends up being heavy sometimes. So, I mean, I'm gonna admit this. My father helps me make my woodwork because he's better at it than me. And I will not deny I'm terrible at it. But I try to hollow out stuff, which you might need a drill for, or at least one of those like little hand drills or something. That kind of helps with like making it less weighted. But I just kind of hand cut pieces. Like I have a hand saw and stuff, and I just kind of go around and cut out the pieces that I think are appropriate for the items. So if that kind of helps, maybe. Like,
Of course, yeah.
you know, I'm free for talking afterwards by the way, in case like someone has more questions or something, or I'm like too stupid to actually understand what the question was. Nailed it. Yes, sir.
How did you make those stripes on your sleeves?
The parts on my sleeves? Oh yeah, my computer died before that. My bad. I did the same technique with just kind of liquefying the acrylic ink and just kind of watering down the area. And I just used an ultramarine blue, and I put so much of that medium in it that it kind of lightened up naturally. Like the more medium you put in something, the more it'll kind of just get a little lighter, so you have to add more acrylic just to get the right consistency or color that you want. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, I just burped. My bad. But yeah, so I just ended up taping off the areas that I didn't want to get marked, so that, you know, I am not that skilled at painting. So as much as it's like, well, look at that line, that is tape's work. Tape was my friend in this instance. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome. I have the same hat, by the way.
Would you recommend buying props instead of making them?
I think that really depends on the price, because there are sometimes, well, when I was in middle school, I made things out of cardboard. I wasn't very good at it, and cardboard ends up getting floppy sometimes unless you like properly make it. I didn't know how to properly make it. I still don't know how to properly make it. But if it's cheap and it's probably from China, I don't have anything against like buying props from other places. Like you do not have to make 100% of your cosplay. Hence me saying upcycling. Sleeves are the worst. But yes, you can either make it or you can buy it as long as it's what you want. In the end, I think that's the important part. Yes.
Any tips on crossplaying?
Crossplay?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you want boobs for this crossplay?
Yeah, I think that would probably be the,
Okay, there is an actual, I don't want to call it an invention. There is an item that I've seen online that it's an object. It's for people who are flat-chested too, just so you know. It's an item where it straps to like, it's kind of like wearing like a crop top or something, and they pretty much are just like fake boobs on you. I think that's a really easy one where it looks good, and you can kind of color it whatever color you want, I believe. Now, this is just what I've gotten from other people. I haven't done it myself because I just have to bind my chest if I crossplay, so it's a little different for me personally.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it depends on how big you want the boobs, but if you want, you could probably buy a bra and kind of sew stuff it. So you would, it wouldn't be just stuffing it with like napkins or something. You would actually like sew like pads into the boobs so that it kind of layers onto your chest depending on how big it is, and just kind of go from there pretty much. Like kind of experiment with how big you want them to be really in the end.
All right.
Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi there. You have been my upfront and center person this whole time.
Yeah, I guess I have been. Okay, so I'm not sure how to properly ask this, but okay, Lane, I don't know like how often sometimes you have to work with makeup. Do you have to work do you have to use that very often?
I wear makeup every time I cosplay. Like this whole thing, this is caked.
Oh man.
Like I have beautiful blemishes under the skin. But generally, for skin, like if you're doing foundation or something, I know this is kind of a weird thing, but I would go through Mary Kay. And yeah, most people think it's like an old person makeup thing, but you know, old people kind of need more makeup sometimes. So it kind of helps with the whole caking part of that.
Right.
But there is a brand, like if you want like a different color eyelashes or something, there's a brand called Hard Candy where they have different colored mascaras and stuff. That kind of helps. You're blonde, so that kind of helps you out a little bit more than people with brown eyelashes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what specific kind of makeup are you thinking of, though?
I don't know. I mean, this it can have so many different varieties. I mean, like face painting is pretty easy.
Face painting is pretty easy, but it can be really hazardous to your skin because you will get like zits everywhere afterwards. At least I did. I did stage makeup in high school for people, not myself, for other people. I wasn't talented enough to be on stage. But generally, I just ended up, I had to buy my own equipment. I ended up just buying colors that I thought were appropriate for whatever the person was playing as.
Okay.
If you get something that says it's 24 hours, it's probably not 24 hours. But if it does stay on that long, it will create small irritations to your skin, so just kind of be wary of that.
All right. I mean, like, I'm not asking for a horror movie makeup.
Well, that's
tutorial.
good. I don't want you to scare kids around here, man.
Okay,
but
I guess I'm done.
Are you sure? Like, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'd say you did.
Yeah, I mean, just as long as you have like a color scheme in mind of what you want to wear, maybe I'll do a tutorial on how to do makeup. I don't know. Oh, is that okay? Hello, sir.
Hello. So I have a question that might be too complicated for this.
We'll
I notice
see.
you're doing a lot of subtractive things. You're starting with like secondhand stuff and upscaling them. So if I wanted to recycle those sleeves into sleeves for something else, or move the sleeves from one set to another, what are some good, strong enough stitches to reattach those so that they're not just going to fall off later? If you're binding multiple elements together on the things you've made.
So you're saying you took a sleeve from a different garment and you're putting it onto a different.
Or
another one.
if I take sleeves off of a shirt and I use that shirt for one costume, but I need the sleeves for something else, I'm gonna, instead of just tossing the sleeves or whatever, turning them into gloves.
No, I
What's
always
a good
keep
way
my
to
scraps.
structurally attach them to other cloth? That's, you just use a sewing machine and put a couple of rows of stitches on it, or?
See, what I would do was I would kind of like, I would always flip it inside out because you just sew everything inside out. It looks so much better. Unless you want kind of like that hippie style where you see the seam. I call it hippie style. That's probably rude. But I would kind of flip it inside out. I would take the pieces and I would kind of like make that kind of like UFO kind of shape where it like kind of flattens at the end. I would use pins to kind of keep it aligned because you want the seams to kind of match when you're doing that. And I would just kind of sew around that area that you pin, like say this is the
So
sleeve.
you just pin it into an inside seam and
like
then
you would be
straight
kind of
across it.
subtracting a little bit of that area because that's what happens when you sew pieces together. So like say your sleeve was here on that other garment, like when you sew that part it'll end up being a little bit shorter. But in the end, like you'll have the two garments together, and as long as you use, like say you're using like a yellow sleeve with a white shirt, if you use probably like white thread, that would probably help with keeping it pretty invisible as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I can do better at like drawing examples, so if you need that too, like totally come and talk to me afterwards. I'm not a scary person, I promise. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry my laptop died. Thank you. You're all beautiful people. I appreciate everyone who is interested in this. Your cosplays are amazing, and I think you all should have a wonderful day. Also, feel free to talk to me. I'm not scary, I promise. Aren't my stickers amazing on my laptop, guys?